So picture this. You're a police officer in Mumbai. It's 2015, and you get a routine tip about a guy carrying an illegal weapon.
Just completely run-of-the-mill street crime.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing you haven't seen 100 times before, right?
Yeah.
So you bring in this driver, a guy named Shamvar Rai, expecting a totally standard interrogation. But instead of just confessing to the gun, he gets terrified.
Right, like genuine panic.
Yeah, bits of real panic start slipping through. And suddenly, he tells you he helped dispose of a dead body 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
With that one completely unexpected confession. A routine weapons charge just utterly unravels a 3-year-old cold case involving a high society murder. It leads to, honestly, one of the most explosive, twisting controversies in India's recent history. Welcome to the deep dive. So, Sheena Bora is introduced to the high society world of Mumbai as Indrani Mukherjee's sister.
Right, her sister.
Yeah. And then in April 2012, she just vanishes. Indrani, who is a very prominent media executive, just tells everyone, oh, Sheena is studying in the U.S.
And people just believed it.
For 3 entire years, almost everyone buys it. It's only when that driver is arrested in 2015 that the police realize Sheena wasn't Indrani's sister at all. She was her daughter from a previous marriage. And according to the authorities, she was murdered.
What's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the deception. I mean, Indrani constructed a remarkably elaborate alternative reality for years.
How do you even do that for 3 years?
Well, she sent emails from Sheena's account telling people she had moved on and wanted to be left alone. She essentially created a digital ghost to cover her tracks.
A digital ghost.
Yeah. But human deception, no matter how clever it is incredibly fragile when it comes up against cold data. The forensic article from our sources provides a masterclass in how invisible data trails expose what words try to hide.
See, I always hear the term digital footprint, but how does that actually dismantle a 3-year-old cover story? Because, I mean, an email from an account is still an email from an account, right?
Well, not to a forensic analyst. You have to think of an email not just as the message itself, but as a digital envelope with a highly specific return address stamped on it.
Okay.
And that return address is the IP address. When investigators looked at the emails Indrani sent, pretending to be Sheena, the data proved they were originating from a completely different IP address in a totally different physical location than Sheena had ever historically used.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the internet service provider logs showed the true origin of those messages.
So she was basically wearing a disguise, but the digital camera caught her real license plate.
That is a great way to put it. And the data trail gets even more devastating when we look at the cell phone tower dumps.
The tower dumps.
Right. On April 24th, 2012, which is the day Sheena was last seen, her phone suddenly went completely silent. No calls, no tower signals, no data usage.
Just zero activity.
Exactly. We can call this the law of digital silence. In the modern era, the total absence of data is often the loudest data point of all. For an adult woman who used her smartphone constantly, a complete, unannounced digital blackout is a massive statistical anomaly.
Wait, explain a cell tower dump to me. Is the phone company constantly tracking our exact coordinates even when we aren't making a call?
Basically, yes. Your phone is essentially a digital heartbeat.
Okay.
Even when it's just sitting in your pocket, it's constantly shouting out to the nearest cell tower, hey, I'm still here, route my data through you. This constant handshake between the device and the tower leaves a log.
So there's a permanent record of everywhere you go.
Yeah. The forensic team pulled those logs for the day of the murder. They traced the locations of Indrani, her ex-husband Sanjeev Khanna, and the driver Rai. Their phones were all hitting the exact same towers in Rigod.
Wait, Ray God.
Yeah, which is where burnt remains had been found by villagers years earlier.
That's terrifyingly precise.
The precision goes even further, actually. The tower logs matched the driver's 2015 confession perfectly. All 3 of their phones went off the network at the exact same time in that remote area.
So they just turned them off.
Right. And the sudden simultaneous shutting down of 3 specific devices in the middle of nowhere is a mathematical impossibility unless they are acting together.
That makes sense.
Then, later that night, one of the phones reconnected near Worli in Mumbai, perfectly aligning with the driver's timeline of where they disposed of a bag. The human beings lied for years, but the cell towers were silently recording the truth the entire time.
But hold on, tech is amazing, obviously, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. Did anyone actually notice she was acting completely out of character?
You mean before the police got involved?
Yeah. Didn't she have close friends or a partner who realized she was suddenly gone? Because a silent phone and a weird email should trigger some human alarm bells, I would think.
Well, that intuition absolutely existed. According to the sources, Sheena's boyfriend, Rahul Mukherjee, knew something was fundamentally wrong long before any tower dumps were pulled.
And Rahul is, wait, he's part of the family too, right?
Yeah, adding to the extreme complexity of this family tree, he is the son of Indrani's third husband, Peter Mukherjee. And Rahul sensed something was wrong purely from the cadence of the text messages he was receiving.
The cadence, you mean like the way she typed?
Yes. It wasn't a gradual fade out of a relationship. It was a sudden stop, followed by messages that just didn't sound like Sheena at all.
Oh, I see.
The sentence structure, the vocabulary, the emotional tone, it was all deeply off. Rahul suspected foul play simply because the psychological fingerprint of the person texting him had changed overnight.
That is so eerie. So digital footprints are like a modern-day fingerprint. You can't wipe off with a cloth, but it took the human empathy of a loved one noticing a changed text message cadence to realize the person behind the screen was gone. And then the digital forensics came in years later to validate that gut feeling with hard location data.
The intersection of human intuition and raw data is incredibly powerful here. And, for you listening right now, it's really worth thinking about your own digital exhaust.
Digital exhaust.
Yeah, our typing styles, the specific towers we handshake with on our daily commute, the Wi-Fi networks we connect to, they tell an uncompromising story about our reality.
It's hard to argue with math.
Right. In this case, a DNA match on the degraded remains from Ray God finally silenced the cover story. But the digital blast radius of that revelation didn't just stop at the suspects.
No, it didn't. And that brings up a crucial shift in our deep dive. The data solved the mystery, sure, but it also blew a family completely apart.
It really did.
Because when an explosive event like this hits the news, society tends to focus purely on the crime scene and the perpetrators. We forget about the people left standing in the wreckage of the living room.
The collateral damage.
Yeah. And that is where Vidhi Mukherjee comes in. She was just 17 years old, living in Mumbai, when her parents, Indrani and her stepfather, Peter Mukherjee, were arrested.
Looking at her interview with the Queen about her memoir, Devil's Daughter, we get a profound look at the psychological toll of that day.
I can't even imagine.
I mean, imagine being a teenager, and overnight, your home is raided, your parents are taken away, and your entire foundation is replaced by a national scandal calling your mother a murderer.
She must have been terrified.
She describes those subsequent 6 years as a journey to hell and not quite back yet.
How does a teenager even begin to process that? You're forced to look at the people who raised you, the people who, packed your lunches, and suddenly see them through the lens of a homicide investigation.
The psychological mechanism she used to survive is deeply compelling. Vidhi realized she had to systematically decode her own parents to avoid losing her own mind.
Decode them.
Yeah, she had to employ a staggering amount of empathy toward her mother to reach a place of forgiveness. She explored Indrani's own history, recognizing that her mother had an incredibly traumatic and tough childhood.
Right.
And Vidhi concluded that this trauma scarred Indrani so deeply that it essentially turned her mother to stone. She had to separate the mother she knew from the damaged person who made these alleged choices.
It's an unbelievable level of maturity to seek out the why behind someone who has caused you so much pain.
It is.
And her relationship with her stepfather, Peter, adds another massive layer of complexity, right? Because the legal system deals in strict binaries like guilty or not guilty, monster or victim. But family dynamics just don't work like that.
The duality is striking. While her relationship with her mother required a massive leap of faith and years of therapy to rebuild, Peter Mukherjee was actually her lifeline during the darkest periods.
Really? Even from prison?
Even while he was in prison during the investigation, the letters he sent her from jail were what kept her going. She would reread them for weeks. It shows how a person can be implicated in a massive legal scandal, yet still be the sole source of emotional stability for a traumatized teenager.
Which makes the title of her memoir so heartbreaking. Devil's Daughter. How does someone even begin to separate their own identity from the headline Devil's Daughter?
It's a heavy label to carry.
She didn't choose that title because she literally thinks her mother is the devil. She chose it because that is how society branded her. People didn't see Vidhi, a grieving 17-year-old who lost her sister and her parents in one blow.
No, they didn't.
They just saw the offspring of a sensationalized true crime show playing out in real time.
She had to battle immense mental health struggles, hitting rock bottom and relying on intense therapy just to reclaim her own narrative from the public domain. Writing the book was her mechanism for unburdening herself.
To get her voice back.
Right, processing the lost time and forcing the world to acknowledge her humanity.
And the fact that she didn't just have to survive her family's collapse, but she had to survive the media's narrative of her family's collapse, brings us perfectly to the systemic issue here.
It really is a perfect transition.
Vidi couldn't just mourn or process her parents' arrest in private. She had to do it with camera crews literally camped outside her house, broadcasting every detail to millions.
It was relentless.
The media took her personal tragedy and packaged it as primetime entertainment. Here's where it gets really interesting, because our final source, the Tiger academic paper, gives us the exact theoretical framework for how this happens.
Yes. The academic paper on media trials is a critical analysis of how news outlets influence public perception of a criminal case long before it ever enters a courtroom.
Before the gavel even strikes.
Exactly. The Sheena Bora case, alongside other massive Indian cases like the Arushi Hemraj double murder or Jessica Lal, wasn't just reported on, it was turned into an absolute circus of public judgment.
So how does the media actually pull off that manipulation? How do they get an entire country to obsess over one family's tragedy?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the paper offers two vital theories to explain the mechanics of a media trial.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is agenda-setting theory. This theory posits that the media doesn't necessarily tell us what to think, but they are incredibly powerful at dictating what we think about.
Wait, so if I turn on the TV and channels 1, 2, and 3 are all debating the Sheena Bora case,
Right.
my brain subconsciously decides this is the most important threat to society today, even if it's statistically rare.
Exactly that. By giving wall-to-wall 247 coverage to this one specific case, the media forces it to the top of the public's mental agenda. They control the spotlight.
That makes total sense.
And once they have your undivided attention, they apply the second mechanism, which is framing theory. This is where they tell you how to think about the topic they've chosen.
Frame it for me. What does that actually look like in practice?
Think of it like a real estate agent trying to sell you a house with a collapsed roof, but they only show you zoomed-in photos of the beautiful rose garden in the backyard. They selectively highlight certain facts while ignoring others to create a specific emotional response.
Manipulating the angles.
Right. In the Sheena Bora case, the media didn't just dryly report the facts of the arrest. They framed it as a story of high society decadence. They focused heavily on Indrani's wealth, her past marriages, her ambition, and her lifestyle.
So they painted a picture.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
framed her as a ruthless social climber rather
Yeah.
than just a suspect in a criminal investigation.
Hold on, though. I want to play devil's advocate and push back on this a bit.
Sure.
Because we love to blame the media and point fingers at these networks for being unethical. But aren't they just supplying what the public demands?
That's the eternal question.
Right. If I am sitting at home devouring salacious true crime documentaries and clicking on gossip articles about wealthy executives, am I the problem?
You're definitely part of the equation.
If the public is obsessed with the salacious details of the rich and powerful, is the media a mirror or a megaphone? Like an audience at a magic show, if the magician keeps pointing to the left hand, the audience will never look at what the right hand is doing, which in this case is the actual legal evidence.
That is a very fair point, and it highlights a massive feedback loop between consumer demand and media supply. However, the Tiger paper focuses on the profound legal tension this creates, regardless of who is to blame.
The legal tension.
Yes, because we are dealing with two fundamental democratic rights colliding head-on. On one hand, you have the absolute necessity of a free press. The public does have a right to know about crimes in their community.
Sure.
But on the other side, you have the accused's fundamental right to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence.
Which feels completely impossible to maintain when every news channel in the country has essentially already convicted you.
It is incredibly difficult.
I mean, the timeline notes that Indrani has always maintained her innocence, even claiming recently that Sheena is actually still alive. Whether the public believes that or not, the law says she deserves a totally unbiased hearing.
This is where the paper discusses the concept of jury nullification, or more accurately for the Indian legal system, immense public pressure on the judiciary.
Because India doesn't use juries for these types of trials, right?
Correct. So the pressure falls directly on the judges. When the media exposes highly sensitive private information or pushes wild, unsubstantiated theories, they create a toxic environment that can prejudice the entire legal system.
But don't we have laws to stop the press from doing exactly that? I thought there were rules against publishing things that could ruin an ongoing trial.
There are. It's known as the sub judice rule. This is a legal principle that restricts the media from reporting on ongoing judicial proceedings in a way that could influence the outcome.
Okay, so why doesn't it work?
Well, in high-profile, highly profitable cases, the media often dances right on the line of contempt of court, risking the fines just to get the ratings. Furthermore, the relentless invasion of privacy strips the accused, and their families like Vidi, of their basic human dignity before a single piece of evidence is tested in court.
Okay, so we've mapped out the anatomy of the problem. A sensational crime leaves a digital footprint. The media grabs the story to feed our curiosity, amplifies the trauma of the survivors, and completely prejudices the legal system before the trial even starts.
That's the cycle.
So how do we actually fix this? Moving from the problem to the solutions, how does a society balance these competing rights?
The academic paper outlines the current regulatory framework. In India, you have the Contempt of Court Act, which empowers the judiciary to penalize reporting that obstructs justice.
Right.
You have the Press Council of India, which sets ethical standards for newspapers. Internationally, you have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or UDHR, which champions both a free press and a fair trial.
But clearly, the existence of those laws isn't enough, or we wouldn't be talking about this media circus.
Which is why the paper argues that the true sustainable mechanism for change doesn't lie in heavy-handed government censorship. That's a slippery slope.
Definitely.
The solution lies in self-regulation by the media itself. Newsrooms need robust, internalized codes of ethics. They need to prioritize rigorous fact-checking over being the first to break a rumor.
That feels like a tall order nowadays.
It is, but they must consciously avoid prejudgment by using neutral language, avoiding visuals that imply guilt, and maintaining strict transparency about what is verified fact versus what is pure speculation.
So what does this all mean for the person listening to this right now? Because you and I aren't the executives writing the codes of ethics for major broadcast networks. We, the public, are the consumers of this media. We're the ones on the couch holding the remote.
This raises an important question, and it's where the paper puts the onus firmly back on the public through the concept of media literacy. We cannot just be passive consumers of whatever the algorithm feeds us.
We have to be active.
Right. We have an active responsibility to recognize sensationalism.
We have to spot the real estate agent hiding the broken roof.
Precisely. Media literacy means seeking out balanced reporting, constantly questioning the motives behind a headline, and profoundly understanding the difference between an accusation and a conviction.
Yeah, they're very different things.
We have to remember that the people at the center of these storms, regardless of the heinous nature of the alleged crimes, are human beings. If the public actively demands higher ethical standards and refuses to click on sensationalized media trials, the networks will be forced to adjust their supply to survive.
Wow. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We started with a routine weapons tip in Mumbai that completely blew open the 3-year-old Sheena Bora cold case.
An incredible starting point.
And we saw how human deception was ultimately dismantled by the law of digital silence. How IP addresses and the constant handshake of cell tower pings exposed a lethal lie.
The data doesn't lie.
No, it doesn't. And then we moved into the blast radius to witness the incredible collateral damage, seeing how survivors like Vidi Mukherjee have to use profound empathy to decode their parents and reclaim their own identity from a voracious public.
Her resilience is just astounding.
Truly. And finally, we zoomed out to see how media trials threaten the very foundation of justice, using agenda setting and framing to replace the careful, evidence-based courtroom with a hyper-emotional court of public opinion.
It is a stark reminder of how deeply interconnected our invisible technology, our internal psychology, and our societal media consumption really are.
It really is. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over that builds on everything we've discussed today.
That should be good.
Well, as our digital footprints become even more permanent, as our phones, watches, and smart cars track our every single move and log every heartbeat, and as media algorithms become hyper-tailored to feed our specific true crime obsessions, are we moving toward a future where traditional courtrooms are entirely obsolete?
That's a heavy thought.
If the data perfectly tracks our every location, and the media perfectly frames our motives to the public before an arrest is even made, will the algorithm and the audience eventually become the ultimate judge and jury?
That is a deeply unsettling but very necessary question to consider as our lives become increasingly public.
Something to think about the next time your phone pings a cell tower. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the narratives you are fed, look past the framing, and we will see you next time.